This conference will now be recorded.
You've been recording me all this time?
No.
Okay, I couldn't have been on the speaker. Trouble. Yes, John Husky. So, yeah, I think you're up on the diocese.
Okay.
You know, Rochelle. Oh, hi, Rochelle. How are you?
Hi, good, how are you?
Good to see you.
We have water and coffee and.
Yeah, since you're there. Yeah, I don't need to. After Halloween, have a meeting. Yeah.
Good, Dave.
Carl, is that you behind the
That is me behind the back.
Yeah. Don't rob any banks, people still recognize you.
Really,
How have you been?
I'm okay.
You're still doing GIS?
Going to city is the funny part. Yeah.
Do you have any idea why when I started sending an email from my home building email account, the senior staff in Baby Film get kickback all the time? Is that kind of something?
Does it have an attachment?
Sometimes they do, most of the time they don't.
Because they increase the lower size of the attachment that you can push through from the public and out to the public.
Yeah, I usually don't send big attachments
Yeah.
to cities. And of course, not, and their filter is set up, so I can't send emails to that person. Can't do it. No. I have a personal email, I'm gonna see that. Send the same message on my other account.
That's weird. That's weird.
Well,
The regular email account turned over into email.com.
yeah, it's Dave D at kernhomebuilders.com. I don't know. Maybe you got on that.
Yeah.
That could be. Who's the admin?
Yeah, there's all that completely changed. Yeah, they fired like 40 people just to handle all the IT stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, well. Well, good to meet you.
Hey, take care.
That's if you want to use you're second on the left. Go ahead. People get up there and get.
Oh, yeah.
I do a name badge and everything. Hi, Stephen.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Take care. Right there. Thanks.
You can move me around.
Oh, no,
I just don't know.
We went to a lot of trouble. Shuffle. He gave them a house in the one door.
You're back.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But I'm not gonna tell you, it's not a problem.
Uh-oh.
You have something I want you to keep. I wanna do Zoom. I wanna- How the people on the side.
Good, there's not in the city.
And then when we do some reductions around the year, I'll grab them like.
You want me to do that?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we put the application together. Double check. City. Yeah, they took over the application. City approved it, and they- Architecture plan, site plan. Permitting. Environmental approval. City approval. You're ready to go.
You bring all the interest to it?
Yes, bro. Yeah. Takes a little while, but-
Oh, I'm sure.
Keep moving. Well, no, yeah. You're right. Proceed.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Oh, because I moved it earlier. The morning.
Did you?
Oh, you.
Pretty good thing.
I'm just.
Oh, yeah. She does actually.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I don't. No, you didn't. Oh, you don't recall. It's just the two of us. It's just the- We had something.
Which line?
Ooh. Well, one of our favorite places, the Woolworth Diner, is, he's talking about closing it. They, when they remodeled, so we went over and had one last, one last go around. I don't care. Okay, do whatever you wish. Huh? I said, you can do whatever you wish. That's Steve.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
Slowly returning. I don't want to have a city council meeting. Too many of those.
This guy right here.
That's your money. How are you?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in like a minute or two. Thank you for joining us.
I just emailed the professor Del Rio.
Oh, really? No.
Well, you were okay, right?
9.
You were right.
Yeah.
Same class.
You're making me feel really old.
I know. Yes. I'll record.
Hi, everyone. So I think everyone's settled in here in the KernCog boardroom. And so we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to KernCog's Public Roundtable Stakeholder Meeting on Regional Housing Needs. My name's Rochelle and Bina Jayasiri. I'm the project lead for the Regional Housing Needs. So just a brief overview on today, what we're going to be doing this afternoon. We'll go around and do welcome introductions. I'm going to give a brief presentation on the RHNA, and then we're going to have a presentation on the draft RHNA methodology by Thomas Pogue. He's one of our RHNA consultants, and he's with the Center for Business and Policy Research at the University of Pacific. Then we'll have a 5-minute break before our housing panel discussion, and then we'll adjourn. So first, let's go ahead and do some introductions. We'll start here in the boardroom. Becky? So everyone could hear on who's online.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Jason Cater. I am the principal planner for affordable housing and neighborhood vitality with the city of Bakersfield.
Good afternoon, Lily Parker with Bakersfield Senior Center. I'm the executive director.
Hi, this is Rob Ball, planning director at Kern Council of Governments.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Aguilar, and I'm here with TDH Associates International.
Good afternoon. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm also with TDH Associates. We do economic and community development and focused on the disadvantaged communities.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Lavin. I'm the Executive Director for the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative.
Hi, Carl Davison, City of Bakersfield, GIS Analyst Planning Division. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Havey. I'm with the Local Government Commission as a Civic Spark Fellow with the City of Arvin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hector Hernandez, Executive Director for Unidad Popular Benito Juárez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Gladys Flores with Centro de Unidad Popular Benito Juárez.
Hi, everyone. Emma de la Rosa, Policy Advocate with Leadership Council.
Suzanne Campbell with Kern Council of Governments.
And I'm Becky Napier with Kern Council of Governments.
Raquel Pacheco with Kern COG.
Dave Demahowski, Home Builders Association of Kern County.
Chris Boyle, Development Services Director, City of Bakersfield.
Stephen Pelz with the Housing Authority, County of Kern.
Christine Vitarelli, City of Arvin, Grant Writer.
Thank you, everyone. And then I'll go ahead and read off the names that we have online. We have about 17 people. We have Ben Raymond with Kern COG. Amanda Ruiz, could you please say what organization you are from?
Amanda Ruiz with the Kern County Administrative Office.
Thank you. And then Janine Nikosi from, I believe, Faith in the Valley. Jeff Schwab with RGS Consultant. Jim Creighton from Jeff Creighton, are you from California City?
Yes, ma'am. Council member.
Thank you. Joanna.
Just a community resident.
Thank you. Jose Fernandez.
Yeah, Jose Fernandez. I'm an associate planner with the City of Bakersfield.
Thank you. Cassandra Gale.
Hi, Principal Planner, City of Bakersfield.
Mark Staples with the City of Taft. Michael Zigala, he's one of our housing panelists. He's with the Regional Early Action Plan. Nina?
This is Nina Carter with the City of Bakersfield. I'm with the Homeless Services Unit.
Thank you. Paul Junker? And Planning Commission Chair Fleming from California City, Richard Albright from City of Maricopa, Suzanne Forrest from the City of Chapter, and then Thomas Pogue from the University of Pacific. Anyone else that joined us online? Thank you, everyone. And then please, a reminder, please mute yourselves when you're not speaking. Some housekeeping instructions. Masks are voluntarily if you are fully vaccinated. The restrooms are through this hallway, through the store, down the hallway. Parking, if you parked along 19th and K, it is only 90 minutes. There is a parking lot on K and 20th, so if you want to move your car later during the break. And then, thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so let's get started with the RHNA overview presentation. So this just shows the relationship between the Senate Bill 375, our Regional Transportation Plan, RTP, the SCS, the Sustainable Community Strategy. So SB 375, its intention was for housing planning to be coordinated and integrated with our Regional Transportation Plan. The RHNA plan is updated every 8 years, with our RTP updated every 4 years. The SCS and RTP forecast at least 20 years. So the regional housing needs allocation it is a state requirement. It addresses the housing needs at the local and general level. The COG is responsible for allocating the housing need amongst all of the jurisdictions within the region. So all jurisdictions within the Kern region. Again, it's a measurement of future housing needs, and it's not a building quota or a ceiling of potential housing market demand. And the local government must revise its housing element to show its plan to accommodate the RHNA, and that's often done through rezoning. And then the table shows the breakdown of how the RHNA numbers are broken down by very low, low, moderate, and above moderate based on the AMI, which is area median income for the county. So the process. So the COG notifies HCD when we're going to adopt our RTP. So we notified HCD over the summer. Our scheduled RTP adoption date is July of 2022. And then we went into like a consultation with HCD. We had several meetings with them, also with the Department of Finance, in order for them to determine the regional housing needs for Kern. So then HCD determined the RHNA number, and then they provided that to us in August. And then so now we've been developing the RHNA methodology and the plan to allocate the Kern region's share to our cities and the county. So after that, the RHNA is then incorporated into the city and county's housing element, which is due the end of 2023. And then local governments submit their housing elements to HCD, and then they'll also have to provide annual progress reports to HCD to show their progress towards their share of the regional housing needs. So our RHNA determination for this sixth cycle, which is from 2023 to 2031. So this is what, after consultation with HCD, this was our Kern's share of the regional housing needs. So for the very low, low, moderate, above moderate, so we have to accommodate 57,650 units. Very low is 23,986. And moderate and above moderate is a combined 33,664. And this is also table 1 of our draft methodology and online. That's available online. So the RHNA statutory objectives. So the RHNA has to have all these objectives in part of the RHNA methodology. The one new objective that was added for this cycle is the affirmatively further fair housing, and that'll be further discussed during Thomas's presentation on the methodology. So I want to go over briefly over the schedule. So we started back in February. We contracted, like I said, with Regional Government Services, RGS, Rincon Consultants, Mintier Harnish, to help develop the RHNA plan for this cycle. In August, we had a second roundtable stakeholder meeting to review RHNA and then start talking about the RHNA methodology, the new objectives and then the factors. And September, that's where we provided the preliminary draft of our methodology, and also in October. And then today, we have our draft methodology ready for review. And we are going to be starting our 30-day public comment period November 8th till December 9th with a public hearing during our Kern COG board meeting on November 18th. We're also going to be sharing a link to a community housing survey. That should be ready next week. So we'll be emailing that out. And then we plan to submit our draft methodology for HCD. So this is a new requirement as well. So HCD is also going to be reviewing our methodology. They have 60 days. So we plan to submit that sometime in December or January. And then we'll be working, meanwhile, on our draft RHNA plan. So in April, May, we'll have the draft RHNA plan for a 60-day comment period. And that should be along with our RTP and SCS as well. And then in July, that's when we plan to adopt our RHNA plan. And then in December of 2023, that's when our local jurisdictions, that's the due date for their housing element revisions. And all the RHNA updates and documents and schedule is available on our RHNA webpage, which is here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to also email me. And that's all I have. Are there any questions? And nothing online. So, all right. So we'll go ahead. Let me pull up Thomas's presentation.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I will run briefly through the report, and then we can have questions after I walk you through the report and where we are in terms of the final draft methodology report that we're now sharing with you today. If you could go to the next slide, please. No, I don't know.
Give me one moment. Let me reopen the presentation. Okay.
Thank you. And I just realized as we were starting that this table is updated in the report. This is table 6 on page 9 of the report. This table lists the 5 factors that Rochelle mentioned. Where it has been updated is part of the ongoing conversation that we've been having with jurisdictions and stakeholders. And it's been adjusted so that this income parity factor now is an income equity factor, which I'll explain in a moment. It's integrated more directly with the RTP and SCS, and we're furthering that equity in both the diversity of housing types and tenure and affordability, as well as in terms of balancing disproportionate household income distributions. If you could go to the next slide. And again, this is the table that Rochelle shared, showing what we're looking at because of the different densities of zoning. We combine the very low and low into the lower income category, and the moderate and above moderate into the higher income category. And this is based on the HCD final determination. Next slide. After consultation with HCD and looking at the structure of how the RHNA allocations were occurring, we've focused on the forecast during the RTP SCS cycle, and this is where we're aligning with the RTP and SCS, looking at the forecasted total RHNA by jurisdictions during this RHNA cycle from 2023 to 2031. Column A there shows the total household growth for each jurisdiction during that time period. And then the last row down there being the total for Kern County as a whole. And then in column B, we look at what share does that household growth during this period equate to. And what we've done is, in terms of allocating the overall total RHNA allocation per jurisdiction, is using the RTP SCS forecasted share of growth and multiplying it by the total RHNA. So column C is taking the 57,650 units that HCD was given us in the final determination and multiplying it by those shares in column B. So that's where we get column C, which is the individual jurisdiction's total share of the RHNA for the county, and that's aligned to the RTP and SCS forecast. In the next slide, this is where we wanted to ensure that equity and transformation. Oh, sorry, table 3. There we go. We wanted to ensure that equity adjustment was taking place, and that we were making sure that the jurisdictions that had higher resources were getting more lower income RHNA, and the resources with higher incomes were getting less high income RHNA. So what happens here is we start in columns A and columns B with the existing share of households in terms of their lower income and higher income categorizations, and that threshold is 80% of area median income. So the lower is the percentage less than 80% of the area median income, and column B has a percentage above 80% of area median. We then looked at how those jurisdictions differed from the share in the county as a whole, and we subtracted that difference to see the divergence from the county as a whole. Proportionally, in the county overall, there's 43% that are lower income households, and the 57% that are higher income households. After looking at the previous allocations that we had made when we used this as an indirect factor of adjustment, we wanted to see where we landed and get comparative numbers, but also ensure that they were affecting the distribution equally across the jurisdiction's current allocations of housing. And that's where we determined this value of 150%. And that's the income equity adjustment factor. And what's done with that income equity adjustment factor is that's multiplied by that difference in the regional lower share in column C. So the 150% is multiplied by column C for each jurisdiction, and that adjustment is then added to the existing share, so column A. So we're multiplying column E by column C and then adding that to column A to get us the adjusted household equity, which is column F. And we do the same for the higher income adjustment, taking column D in this case, which is the regional higher income difference, and multiplying it by our adjustment factor, and then adding it to the existing share in column B to get column G. And if you look across, you'll see columns A and columns B are are pretty much the inverse of columns F and column G. And that again is what this adjustment factor is doing, is it's trying to ensure that the places with more of one type of housing get less of it in the allocation of RHNA in between the lower and higher shares, to promote equity and ensure that is obtained. In the next table, table 4, that income equity adjustment factor that we just saw from column F of the previous table is now in column B of this table. And again, our base RHNA adjustment is carried forward from table 2. We multiply column A times column B to then get the initial jurisdictional lower income RHNA allocation, and that is column C. That's that then, as you see, because we've adjusted the numbers without looking at the existing, without looking at the allocated RHNA from HCD, we see the total of column C is 25,304. That isn't equal to the 23,986 which HCD allocated to us. So we need to adjust those RHNA numbers down. So we do that subtracting the 25,304 from the 23,986 and dividing it by 23,986 to get this percentage difference of 5.21% in column D. That adjustment of column D is then multiplied by column C to get our calibrated lower income RHNA by jurisdictions, initial jurisdiction allocation, which is column E. Column E adds up to our HCD determined value of 23,986. And again, we subtract that lower RHNA allocation from the total. So we subtract column E from column A to get column F, which is the higher RHNA allocation. On the next table, we just pull those numbers together. So this is before adjusting for the other objectives, where the RHNA is coming in at by jurisdiction. We do, however, have to account for those other factors, and that's where we start looking at those factors. Firstly, looking at the jobs housing fit factor, which is on the next table. And this factor is looking at the availability of affordable housing relative to the number of low-paying jobs. And again, this is an objective in the cycle of the RHNA. We are using the counties and jurisdictions number of households, housing units who have gross rent reported at less than $1,000 a month, and we're for the number of affordable housing units. And in terms of low-wage jobs, we're looking at the number of jobs that pay $3,333 a month or less. That then gives us the ratio of jobs to housing relative to the affordability. So we're taking the number of low-wage jobs and dividing it by the number of affordable housing units in the third column across, and that gives us this ratio, the jobs housing fit ratio. That ratio for each jurisdiction then is compared to the ratio for the county. So for instance, in the county as a whole, we're looking at 2.32 low-wage jobs per affordable housing unit. That countywide average is then compared to the ratio for each jurisdiction. So we take the jobs housing fit ratio, the third column for each jurisdiction, subtract the county value of 2.32 and divide it by 2.32 to get the percentage difference from the county ratio. And that's this final column, which is what we use for adjusting for the availability of affordable housing in each county. And again, the goal being to pursue equity and similarity to at least the county level across the jurisdictions, which is why we're adjusting in the final column for the jobs housing fit factor. The next factor that we adjust for is on table 8. And that's the new objective that's been added in this time, which is affirmatively furthering fair housing factor. In this, we use maps that have been published by the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee and HCD. Those maps, we're using the 2021 opportunity maps, which is what they're called. Those maps identify by census tract across the county places based on characteristics linked to critical life outcomes, such as educational attainment, earnings, and economic mobility, and also accounting for racial and racial segregation and extreme poverty. We utilize, because we want to promote opportunities in this factor, those census tracts by jurisdiction that are identified as in the high and highest resourced areas, and identifying those census tracts by jurisdiction. We then use the 2019 ACS data to identify the number of housing units in those census tracts, and we compare that, and that's what we get in the first column here. We compare that to the total number of housing units in each jurisdiction, which is the second column, and that gives us the percentage of higher opportunity housing units by jurisdiction. And for the county as a whole, that equates to 31.1% of housing units. And we then subtract the jurisdiction's housing unit share, higher opportunity share, from the county's overall share. So in this case, for instance, the first row showing Arvin, since they did not have any census tracts that were considered high or highest in the opportunity maps, it is a reduction in their lower income RHNA by 31.1% for this factor. The next table shows how these factors are implemented. We take the initial lower income RHNA share from table 4, column E, and the first column in table 5, and we've copied that, duplicated that here as column A. The two factors are weighted equally, so the lower income RHNA is split 50-50 but between the affirmatively furthering fair housing and the jobs housing fit factor. So in column B is the share for the jobs housing fit factor. We've then brought the last column from table 7, the jobs housing fit factor adjustment, forward and put that here in column C. We multiply column B times column C to get the jobs housing fit adjusted lower income RHNA share by jurisdiction in column D. And we do the same then for the affirmatively furthering fair housing factor. That weight is shown in column E. We bring from table 8, the last column in table 8, those adjustment factors in column F, and we multiply column F times column E to get the affirmatively fair housing adjusted lower income RHNA for each jurisdiction in column G. The last column H is not factor 3, it's the total. Sorry about that mislabel there. And so column H is adding that column G and column D together to get the total factor adjusted lower income RHNA to meet our last two HCD objectives. We have to look then at the next table because of those adjustments that we've made, we've increased the RHNA allocation above what the HCD determination is. So you see column A here in this table 10 is the same as column H in table 9. That is, the sum of that is 27,330. That's above our 23,986. So then we make an adjustment of 12.24% for each jurisdiction to align to that 23,986. So we take column A times the adjustment factor in column B, and we get the calibrated and factor adjusted RHNA in column C for the lower income RHNA. That then is subtracted from our, again, our initial base total RHNA allocation, column D, to get us the calibrated higher income RHNA in column E. Finally, well, after all those adjustments and accounting for all of the objectives, we summarize that in table 11, where we show the total factor adjusted draft methodology allocation by jurisdiction for lower income RHNA and higher income RHNA, and total RHNA by jurisdiction and for the county as a whole. That is in terms of where the impacts come in. On table 12, we look at where the existing share of households are compared to the shares that are being allocated through this methodology, to show again that those areas with more lower income RHNA are getting less factor adjusted RHNA. Again, promoting equity and trying to promote a similarity in terms of opportunity throughout the county, as is the objective of the RHNA methodology. And then on the next table, we've looked at currently available residential unit capacity, the medium, high, and mixed use density being the density that we're looking at when we're looking at the lower income RHNA distribution. We see all except for Maricopa, which didn't have any. All jurisdictions currently have that capacity allocated for their lower income RHNA draft allocations. Similarly, we do the same for the very low and low density, which is the higher income RHNA factor allocations. And again, across all the jurisdictions, this draft RHNA factor allocation is below that value. And finally, in the last two columns, we compare the total vacant unit capacity to the total draft adjusted RHNA allocation. And again, we're showing here that all the jurisdictions are below what they're being allocated. In the final table we wanted to share with you today. Oh, I got one more. Sorry. This is just showing the table 14. These were the different potential base allocations from the RTP-SCS that we examined and before we determined the allocation 4, which is what is used to determine the top line. And this is in table 14 on page 15 of the report as an appendix. And then I think finally the next slide shows we wanted to give a comparison in terms of where this RHNA allocation comes in compared to the last cycle. The last cycle was over a 10-year period, and this cycle was over an 8.5-year period. So we've adjusted that for that here and given it in an annualized version. You see that overall the total RHNA allocations are very similar. That is despite the fact that there is a decline in growth, but this cycle of RHNA has added 2 additional adjustment factors. One is for overcrowding, and one is for cost burden, and those together account for over 20,800 of the 57,650 units, and 88% of that is from overcrowding, and it's that overcrowding adjustment factor that has really sort of kept this annualized RHNA perhaps a bit higher than might otherwise be expected. And we did want to share that with you as well today, just so you get an idea in terms of where this cycle and where this draft methodology is coming in terms of allocations by jurisdiction, and where does that compare to where things were last time. And with that overview, I am happy to take any questions, and hope that helps clarify what's in the report. And if you have any further questions, like I said, I'd be glad to answer those now.
Do we have any questions for Thomas on the draft methodology? No. And we did have a couple questions on the chat. Other than emailing the survey, are you guys planning on sending paper copies? We don't, but we could have paper copies available here in our office. That should be available next week. Oh. And then I forgot to mention that we are recording this meeting, so it'll be available on our RHNA page. We did have a request for the same roundtable to be held during an evening. So we are still coordinating that, but it might be on December 2nd. But we will email and provide meeting details.
I have one question.
Yes.
Just for the, I believe it is on now. My green light's on.
Yes.
There. Test. Okay, good. Tom, just for giggles, you've used terms like promoting equity and other nice catchphrases throughout your presentation, but when it all shakes out, Kern COG has assigned 76% of lower income RHNA to the city of Bakersfield. How do you speak to that as being equitable to the county overall?
That is a result of the income being relatively high in Bakersfield compared to the rest of the county, and again, that is where you see the income and the areas of opportunity. That's where that is coming out through the factors that we had to consider for HCD and the 6th cycle of RHNA objectives. It wasn't a choice to put it on Bakersfield, but as we did the calculations, weighing all the objectives that we had to obtain, that's where the numbers were coming out in terms of how to balance the challenges of these different objectives that had to be weighed.
I'll speak to the allocation as part of roundtable discussions.
Does anybody else have questions or comments? So we'll take a 5-minute break and we'll resume at 2:20. Thank you. Oh, really? It says 2:16. Outside of so like inside.
Okay, I just not understand. So like, for example, the mosque, that would be unincorporated. That would be unincorporated.
But that's for the applying for. But that's the
If there's unincorporated, then it's right now. And it's the other.
Oh, that's the total.
There's a total, okay,
Yeah,
that's
that's the total.
all right. Okay.
The unincorporated.
Yeah. Everything that's not the city, or the others, okay. Thank you.
Too easy.
Oh.
I like. Maybe used to be I wouldn't care less, but
Well, I'm just the moderator. I didn't do freedom.
when all else fails, blame it on the consumer. I knew you'd like that. This is, it's so complicated, the state is just so much more complicated. And to try to say that our road is going to attract more high-end houses and low-end houses in the next 10, 15 years. It's probably not going to happen. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, oh, we're at
You going to the online tab from Cal City.
Okay, sorry about that.
A little bit of sugar and caffeine to stay awake.
The little cookies with chocolate?
Yeah,
they're good.
that's what I got. This is my third time seeing this.
I think I've seen it more than 3.
Okay, okay, I think all our panelists are back. Yes. Can everyone please find your seats and then we could go ahead and start our panel discussion. Okay, we're gonna get started now. Thank you everyone for coming back. And I'm gonna hand it over to our moderator for our housing panel, Becky.
And please keep in mind that I didn't do the RHNA, I'm just the moderator, so.
I'm going to use casual pronouns like you.
Okay. Okay, that's okay. I have broad shoulders. I can handle it. I would like to thank our panel for being here, and I would like to introduce them. First, I'm going to introduce Michael Segala. He's actually on the bottom row, just waved on the screen. He is a principal at Segala Inc., and he also works with all of the 8 Valley counties on our REAP program and on several other issues. So Michael's very knowledgeable. I'd like to also welcome Stephen Peltz, who is the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Kern County. And everyone knows Stephen, I think, so he needs no introduction. I would also like to introduce Christopher Boyle. He's a Development Services Director with the City of Bakersfield, and I believe you used to be with the City of Madera. So he's got a lot of experience in housing elements, planning, all those types of areas. And I'd also like to introduce Dave Domahowski. He is with the Home Builders Association of Kern County. He's their executive officer, and he's going to give us the private sector perspective. My brain went dead. Sorry about that. First off, we're going to start with Christopher Boyle. The first question is, let me tell you a little bit about the format. I'm going to ask each question to one of the panelists, and then I'm going to open it up after he gives his opinion or his information, and I'm going to open it up to the rest of the panel to give input as well. So everyone's going to get to talk. It's just I was hoping it'd be more of a conversation than me just asking questions and them answering them. So Chris, what are some requirements and best practices for meeting RHNA allocations in updated housing elements?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, even though the numbers are terrible. Once upon a time, you mentioned my last cycle. I was in the city of Madera, and there's a transition going on right now, which places me just slightly nervous, because in the past, I think it's a fair statement to say we accepted our RHNA numbers, but they, by and large, they weren't realistic in terms of what the city could do in terms of generating additional housing, whether that be market rate housing or lower income, moderate income housing. But today, that's different. It's very different, and that's expressed in my concern. I have here with me the most recent commentary from the director of the State Department of Housing and Community Development, Mr. Velasquez. And I have 2 highlighted sound bites. And the first one is, it is imperative for the state to use all the tools at its disposal to hold local jurisdictions accountable to meet the housing supply's needs. And the second one is that if, however, localities are unwilling to do their part to realize this vision of more housing for all, the state will use its authority to compel them to do so. So it's when a city with 44% of the population of the county is assigned 76% of the low income housing, it's alarming. It's alarming because I, as the Development Services Director, I'm entrusted to comply with the law That's we all as public servants want to comply with the law, but at the same time, to create an environment that's healthy and conducive to development within the city. And these types of numbers, they're really alarming, because not because I don't want to provide low-income housing. I do, in a very, very real and meaningful way. I just don't know if anybody can provide those kinds of numbers. So if I took that 20,750 units that is assigned to me, or at least tentatively assigned to me, over the lifespan of my RHNA, I would be bringing 2,593 low-income units into my inventory annually. So let's look at what I've been able to do in the last 8 years. Now, the state would assert to a degree, you get sound bites like it's the city creates housing. The city needs to go build more housing. But the reality is, cities don't build houses. The development community does. The market drives where those houses are built, income categories that are catered to. I, as the city, we direct resources towards trying to provide opportunities for all income groups. I provide Mr. Pels a hefty stipend every year in an effort to try and do that. But if I looked at my latest annual report to the state of California, I would find that in the last 8 years, I've created, for very low income, I've created 377 total very low income units. And I'm proud to say that in my only year that I've been here as the Development Services Director, we put 192 units of those 377 on the map. Now that's no small part to measure in. I'm not taking credit for that, but that shows that there's a dedication to that purpose to do that. That's not 2,593 units. Total for low income in the last 8 years, 127 units. Total for moderate income households in the last 8 years, 4,401 units. Total for above moderate. Total for above moderate. These are not deed restricted units. It's just the market doing what the market does. Just what Mr. Domahowski's builders building houses, 7,185. So if you took that on average, that's like a total, an average of 898 units above moderate each year. So I can't even make my above moderate numbers just letting the market drive the market. And so it's scary. It's scary when I see this kind of number come down the pike. I want to be successful. I want to provide for every citizen, regardless of their situation. But I feel like this number, I feel like I failed before I've started to try, based on the historical numbers that I've put there. I don't know of any city that has the resources to go and generate those kinds of numbers. It's scary, and to so egregiously lean upon the city of Bakersfield to generate those things. Whew, holy cow. I feel like there is some adverse outcome for my municipality that is yet to be crafted by my good friends at Sacramento. Okay. Last year, my total number of units, which was it was during a pandemic, but we stayed open as the Development Services Department as an essential service. Last year, I think my numbers, the total number of units that were generated without looking at income brackets, we issued permits, not all of them were built, but we issued permits for 1,980 units total. And that's the best year we've had in the last 5 years. We keep records based on charting for 5-year increments. So this year is not started out is not finishing anywhere near those numbers from last year. as I think the market is in a place where it's trying to figure out what a post-pandemic market looks like. It's had supply chain issues. It's had huge spikes in construction costs. I know that's thrown off some of Mr. Pells's projects in meaningful and significant ways because he's not exempt from the cost of lumber, nor is the contractors that he employs to build those projects that are so important to our community. So
those numbers were for 2020 then?
Those were 2020 numbers, yes. So I'll segue into what the importance of RHNA. And the city is stepping into several meaningful projects right now. We have consultants at work right now on our municipal services review, which defines our capabilities to grow and expand and provide services, that all the city services that a home needs, whether that's storm drain, sewer, water, streets, solid waste, all of the, a city in essence is a service delivery organization, and you don't realize the number of services that are provided until one of them is taken away from you. You go, wait a minute, what do I do with my garbage? Or how come there's no water coming out of my faucet? So we're actively engaged in making sure that the city is prepared to provide for growth moving into the future. We're on target to have that completed before the end of 2022, where that includes a sphere of influence update, and that's topical as well, especially when the governor comes along and provides for executive orders that place huge setbacks on wellheads. We are a city that is a component of the mineral resources extraction component that is Kern County, and so we do have wells that are interspersed within our urban fabric. That may or may not change what our sphere of influence looks like, and it may or may not change our capacity to continue to build the way Bakersfield has traditionally been built. We're in the middle of our housing element update as well. We've already selected a consultant for the 6th cycle, and we're anticipative and anxious to get going with what will be a very important tool moving forward in conjunction with that 3rd piece of the puzzle, which is our general plan. The housing element being a required element thereof. So the city understands the importance of housing production, understands the importance of the regional housing needs allocation process and how it's formulated, and we'll continue to try and do everything we can to facilitate positive outcomes. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michael, jump in here anywhere.
Well, thank you, Becky. The question is, what are some of the requirements and best practices for meeting these ambitious goals? So thank you, Christopher, for pointing everything out that you did. I guess the main point there is start now, start early. We all the cities know that you're going to have to accommodate a lot more housing. So it's a big task, and I think the analysis on sites and sites that can accommodate housing is something that folks can work on now as a best practice.
I think, I mean, there's a lot. We'll get into some of it in the other questions, but I mean, one of the fundamental things we have to start with, and I think the piece that the state's ignoring is that cost is the primary factor of what gets built and how quickly it gets built. And you could have all of the sufficiently zoned and properly zoned land to be able to meet your RHNA and still not meet it because the costs are too high for both on the affordable side as well as getting up now into the moderate income side. And so that has to be addressed at a state level because the state has put on requirements for constructing new housing that weren't there 5, 10, 15 years ago. And so you see the cost of housing significantly outpacing the income level increases, significantly outpacing rate of inflation. And so you have to look back at what are they putting onto housing? What are they requiring housing to do now that they didn't in the past? They're all notable goals. I mean, you want to improve the environmental friendliness of housing, you want to improve its energy efficiency, you want to improve its safety, et cetera, but there are costs associated with that. And so looking at that in more of a balanced approach of trying to figure out how can you produce more housing, because there's only a finite amount of funds available, whether it's low income or not. So that seems to be lacking from the conversation and needs to be addressed, certainly at the state level. There's other things, I mean, there's a lot of zoning, I'll talk about this a lot today, but zoning flexibility is a big issue. There's a lot of vacant and dying commercial corridors that are located in every one of our towns and unincorporated areas that used to be thriving and now are half vacant and on their way down to being completely vacant. And those are not easily changed to residential now because of zoning laws that make it more difficult, because you have to do zoning changes and general plan amendments and all that. Changing the rules to make that to be able to be easily converted into residential use would be one thing to do to help facilitate new construction or rehab.
And I would add that those are good points. Sometimes I think that the reason why there is such pressure placed on cities or responsibilities placed on cities, because there are municipalities where it's hard to build anything. We meet with out-of-town developers and we say we can get this done on this date, and they're saying like, well, that's until you tell me it's a complete application. And the answer is no, that's when I give you a building permit to go build it. But the idea of zoning being in the way, maybe in all the places I've worked, maybe Bakersfield has the most residentially friendly zoning in terms of it having a nested characteristic. You can build not just residential in residentially zoned properties, but there are several commercial zones that provide for residential development as a component of development. A lot of your downtown residential development right now is not done in residential zones. But speaking to repurposing lands as part of depressed corridors and the like, I'm 100% an advocate for that, and that's something we have to look hard at as part of our housing element update and the accompanying rezone. There are specific corridors in the city that are aching to be repurposed, and the city is going to continue to look at methodologies that make repurposing those properties more feasible and more streamlined for the prospective developer.
Dave, do you have any input from the private sector?
Yeah, well, I understand Chris's angst at some of these numbers. I started my planning and development career in local government, and all the years I've worked in the industry, I think I've worked in 22 different municipalities and 5 counties in California, and I'd put Bakersfield right up there among the business-friendly jurisdictions in the state. So to punish Bakersfield with a virtually infeasible economically target for low and very low income housing seems really unjustified and unjust. You know, the reason we have a housing crisis is because there's so many wealthy cities in the state that have done virtually nothing to accommodate lower income or even moderate income families, especially the coastal regions of California. And the governor and the state have now weaponized HCD in a manner that's going to simply antagonize local governments up and down the state. You know, command and control regulations, as in air quality, don't work as well as incentives do. So it's very disappointing to see those kind of numbers coming out in a process that could very well be used against the city in the future to really stifle most, if not all, economic development, including private development of residential rentals and for sale single-family housing.
I probably shouldn't keep this going, but
go for it.
Why do you think that the state didn't target the bad cities rather than do a full sweep of everyone? if that makes any sense at all.
Well, they're going after everybody. They're suing Huntington Beach.
Yeah, I know that.
Huntington Beach is a fairly tawny area.
I'll keep going on terms of what Bakersfield is trying to do to be responsive. Recently, there was, and Mr. Pels is alert to it as well, a recent bill passed that was specific to being categorized as a pro-housing city. And when you look at the requirements that for making that determination, it requires an application. The city hasn't formally applied as of yet. But when you look at the kinds of things that are required to make that determination, whether that's local financing incentives for housing, well, the city uses significant PSBS dollars in competitive funding for low income housing projects, or reduced parking requirements. We have significant reductions in parking requirements throughout the city. Or adopting zoning to allow by rights for residential and mixed use developments. Well, that's something we're going to look hard at. A lot of our use schedule is by right already, but as a development services director, I have a desire to go to more of a ministerial permitting process that will fast track development. And part of that is developing objective housing standards, objective multifamily housing standards. And I was in a meeting this morning that was looking at some samples of what that should look like, because that helps streamline multifamily development. And I know that's something the Housing Authority would embrace. There's adoption of accessory dwelling unit ordinances, and the city has enhanced accessory ADU ordinances already in place. We're in the process of creating additional resources such that an individual can just simply pull a permit of a pre-designed accessory dwelling unit and place it. There are incentives for impact fees. There's an impact fee incentive program. There's we just stood up our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. A lot of those things that the state is looking for within a municipality, the city is either already has in place or is in the process of analyzing such that we can stand something up that leads to positive outcomes. So it's right. We started this dialogue with Stephen saying, well, you know, the state kind of has to take on some responsibilities for it, but the state isn't very good at that in a way. We could actually go all the way back to disbanding redevelopment agencies as a tool for housing, and that being a real, that was like taking a step off a cliff in terms of affordable housing production. But the state doesn't mention that as being one of the impetuses to creating a housing shortage. But that really was the beginning of the crisis as defined by the state of California that we're in today. It's not about the city who doesn't build anything. It's about the resources that were taken away and the additional costs that have been added over time, sometimes by the same assembly members and senators. On one side, they would say, do this, and that adds cost to housing. Well, the very next bill that comes across the governor's desk is saying, oh, but we're going to add costs. It's a difficult dynamic to try and create positive outcomes in, and it's even harder when Director Velasquez throws down and says, and we're going to force you to do so. But news to HCD, we are doing our level-headed best to create housing opportunities for all income classes, period. And I wish I had a greater partner in Sacramento that I could count on to add additional resources as opposed to harsh rhetoric.
Stephen, the next question I have is for you. What resources or planning tools are available to help with production of housing, and in particular, affordable housing?
Sure, I think land banks are helpful. That's something that is not a traditional activity necessarily by municipalities, but it's something that can be facilitated by cities and counties to essentially create or gather suitable landing that could be used for affordable purposes and bank it so it's available when the funding comes down to be able to build it. I think creating a housing trust fund, the cities move forward with doing that. The state has matching funds for housing trust funds, and other communities in the county can pursue that, where you're essentially using local money and then getting a match from the states. You're doubling your local resources for housing. Online permitting systems are helpful. I know the city's pursuing theirs, and there's other efforts locally to expedite the whole permitting process and be able to track projects throughout the process and make sure they're moving in a timely manner. Impact fee waivers are helpful. We don't see much of that locally. You'll see it more usually in the wealthier areas of the state, but being able to offset some of the cost for the housing by saying we'll waive this impact fee if you serve a certain income level of household. And then, certainly about the whole zoning piece, we talked about that a little bit, but just eliminating certain zoning categories right now. So the PD or PUD zoning kind of layers that add a additional level of opportunity for people to exercise their NIMBY rights and oppose something coming near them are not helpful for facilitating housing. And so we certainly appreciate having those removed from zoning, so you can do it by right and not have to ask for permission from the neighbors to be able to do that. Because anytime you have to ask for permission, that just throws uncertainty into the equation of building the housing, makes it more costly and more difficult and less likely it's going to happen in the end. So yeah, those are a handful of things. I mean, even we've talked a little bit before about the concept of doing larger kind of NEPA reviews. So if you use federal funding, you're required to do what's called a NEPA environmental review, and that process can take 6 to 9 months. Being able to have a master level NEPA review potentially for multiple properties and kind of getting them approved ahead of time to be able to expedite the housing, because sometimes housing funding typically takes a long time to acquire, but there are some newer state programs right now that if you get your foot in the door right away and are ready to go, you can get the money and you're more likely to get the money. So being ready is an increasingly important factor in being able to develop affordable housing.
Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'd like to just speak about on the REAP program for the Valley, which is the REAP is a Regional Early Action Planning Program. So a couple of years ago, the state allocated money to every COG, every MPO to work with their cities to increase housing production. So part of that effort was an allocation to the Valley of about 19 million, of which Kern will receive about 3 million. There's a working group, 24-member working group of elected officials across the Valley. Your supervisor, Scrivener, Bob Smith, your council member, and Kathy Prout, mayor of Shafter, I believe, Shafter, sorry.
Shafter.
Are part of that effort. So we have a technical assistance program Valley-wide where cities can request technical assistance. We have 4 consultants on hired to do that. We're working with a couple cities in Kern County at this time. We have an ADU template for any Valley jurisdiction to use, draft ordinance, staff reports, building plans, collateral materials for the public. So that's forthcoming. We have a development code update guide that will help cities interpret all the massive number of housing bills and case law that has happened in the past 5 years. That cities will be able to use as a supplement as they process projects or look for zoning in their communities. Then we have a webinar series every month. We have educational webinars, and we do have a lot of participation from Kern County jurisdictions in that monthly educational webinar. So those are some of the resources. Not going to fix it all. I agree with everything that everybody said. The bottom line is this: affordable housing is the most complicated, onerous, difficult, risky thing you can do. Ask Steve. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money, and you can throw all the money that California has at this, and it won't even make a dent in the problem we have with affordable housing. So what else can we do? We can look to engage more of the private sector. I think there's a lot of things that could be done to engage the private sector. Then Dave's group of builders can be more involved, maybe in some of that, solving some of the problem we have. Condos, there's no condo construction. There's now 2 projects coming up in the Fresno area, but condos hit all the buttons, all the right buttons. They're dense, they provide ownership, they're infill, and they provide a lot of opportunities for affordable housing. So what can the state do to facilitate more condo development? I think if the state was able to figure that out with providing more risk to builders on the construction defect insurance, or providing a subsidy that doesn't trigger prevailing wage for condo production, would take care of the upper tier, lower income, all moderate income needs in any community tomorrow. I mean, you could just, the private sector could go nuts if the state would be able to create some risk aversion for building condos. That would be huge. And there's other things that could be done, but I'll save it for later. But that's what we're working on now with the REAP program.
Thank you, Michael. Dave, I'm going to ask you this question. From the private sector perspective, what are the challenges of building affordable housing?
Oh my goodness. Well, state regulation is probably the biggest one. While the governor has named homelessness and the housing crisis among his top priorities, recognizing that climate change is driving the entire state from top to bottom, other than the governor's priority. The cost of state regulation is something the city can't waive, and that's a huge constraint. Since 2010, the Energy Commission alone has imposed well over $30,000 in new energy efficiency costs on new construction. That affects apartments, and I don't think there's a waiver for the building code in affordable housing. But again, our association represents market rate privately financed housing. We do focus on a very important first-time buyer and entry-level market for working families here in Kern County, because given our limited household incomes, only about 20% of households here can qualify for a home over $300,000. And the state regulations in energy alone are pushing virtually all housing that's built new here over the $300,000 threshold, or very, very close to it. So that's not a positive development. But Michael's absolutely right. There's no more difficult niche in the development industry than affordable housing. And it takes a special company and a special group of dedicated people to make that work. And it helps to have, favorable local governments like we have here in Kern County. Our industry has been meeting with Chris and public works people pretty much quarterly for the last couple of years on permit streamlining issues. And we've made some real progress. I always ask him if it's possible to reduce the traffic impact fee, and he just laughs. But, other than that, there are limitations on what cities can do to reduce the cost to the developer because of state mandates and CEQA. CEQA reform is always mentioned as a possible solution to the affordable housing crisis. Reforming CEQA is politically infeasible in California, has been for the last 20 years, and it's not getting any better. So I don't know what the answer is other than money. And while Bakersfield, in the context of the Central Valley, may look like a concentration of wealth, our median income here is half of what the state's is. So to single out Bakersfield and Kern County for extraordinary performance and particularly very low income housing production is really a stretch.
So Dave mentioned, I'm just going to chime in on, he mentioned homelessness. So does anybody know what the 2 states are that have the lowest per capita rate of homelessness in the US? It's Louisiana and Mississippi, which are very poor states, but they also have very low housing costs. and low barriers to housing. So if you look at the average rent levels there, average cost of buying a home there, they're on the very much lower end of the 50 states. And there is a strong correlation there between housing costs and homelessness.
I'm going to just ask this question to everyone. Infrastructure in particular, water, sewer, and transportation have been identified as major constraints to the production of housing in the San Joaquin Valley. Are you aware of any best practices that help address these infrastructure challenges?
I'm chatty today. What the heck? Every time development occurs, the city has standards that are applied, whether that's the width of the street, curbs, gutters, the width of sidewalks. Are they linear? Are they curved linear? Are they meandering? Where does the street light go? Where does the fire hydrant go? How big will the water main be? The sewer main? I could go on. That's part of our service delivery. Each of those requirements are meant to provide for a safe, livable community. One of the solutions, and I think it's something we have to look hard and explore as it relates to the city moving forward and growing, is sustainability. And another way to say sustainability is a density. The state is going to ask us to provide a more denser urban form. What that means is more people living on that same length of sidewalk, that same length of street, tying into that same length of sewer pipe, same length of water line. And that's going to be a dramatic and challenging shift for the city, providing these, well, so you mentioned condominiums as an example, where there's a greater density. The city of Bakersfield prides itself in its community. It's a community that has single-family residential homes on typically spacious lots. And so, as we look at our general plan and our housing element, we're going to have to introduce other types of housing forms that add additional density, because the infrastructure that goes there is going to go there, whether there are 4 homes on that block or 5 homes on that block. So there's cost savings that come with densification as well. So that's one dynamic as it relates to the city as it looks to move forward. And it's one of my challenges as a development services director to make that such that the city can continue to capitalize on what it does well, while offering a new product lines that provide for more densification consistent with what state goals are. It kind of ties in with my frustrations as it relates to RHNA, in that we want to comply with law, and I'm sure my general plan, the state of California, will ask us to have a more denser urban form. In order to do that, I want to place the city in a position, and my development community in a position, where they can successfully implement that. But in the case of the infrastructure that we provide, the more laterals that are tied into a sewer line and a water line, the development community provides those improvements, and they're the same. That sewer main is the same main in the street. How much we capitalize on it, there's one opportunity right there.
Becky, can I say something really quick? And it's kind of funny, but
Sure.
And following up with Chris's point there, we've talked to numerous cities in the valley, smaller rural cities, that cannot accommodate the density and the infill that the state of California wants, because they don't have a ladder fire truck to get past the second floor of a building. That's huge, and no one's ever talked about it. Just thought I'd bring it up. It was fitting, and it's kind of humorous.
I had a police chief one time that his wife wouldn't stay in a hotel above the 5th floor because she was afraid the ladder wouldn't reach her. Just a little levity.
And when we talk about, say, Michael mentioned REAP funding and the Kern County being assigned 3 million of those funds. Well, what's the average cost of one unit of affordable housing?
Too much.
We're really talking about, if we really capitalize and we use efficiencies, we're talking about between 10 and 15 units of low-income housing being generated by $3 million, and that's supposed to be spread countywide. How much does a ladder truck cost per Michael's dialogue? Ladder trucks come at 7 digits to provide for one, but that's the direction we really need to be taking, capitalizing on our infrastructure such that we can provide for a more walkable, sustainable, livable, denser urban form.
And I have one other question for Stephen. What other forms of assistance could help improve housing that could benefit the region? If you can think of any on top of what you've already talked about.
The only thing I can think of that hasn't been mentioned so far is just dealing with the labor force issues, because certainly that's part of the cost of whether it's market rate or affordable, is just the lack of trained workers that work in the construction industry. So, building up the whole job in apprenticeship type training programs that can deal with those issues. Utilizing different technology as well. I mean, I know the counties, I read in the newspapers, providing some incentives to have a modular home builder come and set up a manufacturing facility here in Kern County. We're excited about that. I mean, there are opportunities that the industry really hasn't figured out how to beat stick-built construction for what it costs here in Bakersfield, but eventually they will as technology improves and their processes improve. So there's improvement that can help facilitate more production just by having the technology come into the housing industry and more of the automation and offsite building, that type of thing.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay with you if I open it up to the public to ask some questions? Does anyone in the audience or on the phone or on the computer have questions on the computer? If you could just raise your hand. And Troy, please turn on the mic if you want to, yeah. But and let's try to keep them brief. I don't want everyone to have to be here till 5 o'clock.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm pleased to participate in this workshop.
Can you take your mask off? Thanks.
My name is Troy Hightower, a local consultant. And the question I have is, it's my belief that the communities would really be interested in seeing more affordable housing and community-based organizations. And so my question is, how could those organizations and members from the community support some of the recommendations that have been made, like the zoning changes and the land bank? How can the community get involved to advance those changes and maybe look at some of the obstacles?
Well, I know, I don't think it, I know that the city hears its constituency as relates to opportunities to amend ordinances or to implement policies that will ultimately be a benefit to the city overall. And you're in a unique situation right now. I think I haven't put the name Emma's on my email list now with the Leadership Council as relates to the upcoming housing element update and the general plan update. We're building a stakeholder list that we'd like to engage all potential communities and organizations, individual communities in the city, as well as the individual organizations that support those various communities, and So if there are recommendations, we want to hear them. And we're going into a period now where, with the 6 cycle housing element and a general plan update, that we have opportunities to make the right accommodations, make the right changes to our zoning code, such that we can be a leading city in the state moving forward. The city's essentially doubled in size in 25 years, and there's no reason why the city couldn't double in size in the next 25 years throughout our general plan cycle. We certainly are planning to have plenty of affordable housing per RHNA, aren't we? That was bad. I apologize.
Well, I appreciate that.
But Troy, make sure you're a participant within our stakeholder outreach. Because we want to hear from all communities.
I would be happy to, but sometimes it's hard to find out when these things happen or when they're available. And so I do appreciate it. And a lot of the comments that were made, I think, can help address the issues. And I'm sure that the communities would support them if we had that ability to support them.
Well, make sure you send me an email. I'll add you to that emailing list. One of the most important components of a general plan update is having a very robust visioning outreach component. And that will be a year-long process, not a 4-meeting long process, a year-long process per my contract with Rincon Consulting Incorporated, because we both understand, both myself, staff, the council, and the consultant understand the importance of building consensus within our community before we move forward with a document that will guide it for the next 20 to 25 years. So send me that email. I'll make sure it gets into that mailing list.
I
know
understand
Emma. I know Emma's going to receive communications. She's on that list now.
Excuse me, sorry about this. But I understand the importance of the general plan, and I will pass it on to other people in the community that you said that you'd like to hear from them to help develop those policies and find ways to, deal with some of these obstacles. Thank you.
Please, and I'd like Lily to send me her email as well. Okay, can you do that? All right.
Yeah, I have a comment to Troy's question in terms of, how do you organize community support for a broad range of housing types? And I think there's a role for public-private partnerships in that. And our industry is involved with local school districts up and down the state. The California Building Industry Association has a program called the Building Industry Technology Academy. They provide a free 4-year curriculum, and builders even donate tools to the high school programs that are doing this. And you've heard Brian Schaefer's presentation recently on the career training programs that they have in the Kern High School District. That can be a huge incentive for not only training and keeping local youth employed here, but for helping build the economy. One of the biggest issues in home building on a national basis is shortage of qualified labor. Chris is going to have a heck of a time hiring enough construction guys to build his 2,500 units a year of low-income housing, because they just aren't out there. The infrastructure, either corporate infrastructure or labor infrastructure, just isn't there. So we have to devote a lot of resources to that going forward.
I'm sure those members of the community don't have a clue of what you just said. The opportunities to participate in that, they just don't know about it. So we want to try and be a bridge to get that information out to the community, because that's a very good program, sounds like to me. Thank you.
Sounds good, Troy.
Are there any other questions from either online or in the audience? I was going to say, you're being awfully easy on these gentlemen.
Okay, I want to jump in here, if I may. Dick Albright, Maricopa. Let's see if my camera works. I'm the newest dummy on the block here. I've only been involved in the city for from an official standpoint for the last several months. And I'm still trying to figure, you know, what I'm listening to here. I haven't been this befuddled since taking permutations and combinations in algebra in high school. And I have no idea as to why it is that we seem to be under threat from Sacramento for trying to do the best job that we are able to do. Now, Maricopa, from what I saw on the charts there, we're kind of at the bottom of the pole here. So are we not partnering up community to community? We've got 11 cities in Kern to help spread the wealth or the delth, whatever. I don't know exactly what's happening here. I recently read a letter from the mayor of Coronado that was complaining back about the issue of the fact that military housing was not introduced as part of their qualifications. So, I mean, there are many, many questions. We've also got a delth of our wealth of farm worker housing that where we've got single family dwellings that are housing 15, 20 people sleeping on the floors, you know, 5 or 6 that I know of in this city. So I'm still kind of awash here as to why it is that we seem to be faced with some problems that Sacramento has not addressed properly for us. I'm going to shut up now. Thanks.
Does anyone want to try to address that?
I appreciate Maricopa's comments. I'm not sure there was a question there. I would note that my requirements per the RHNA are 20,750 lower income units, and Maricopa's is 2, and I rest my case.
Okay, Emma.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Emma de la Rosa, Policy Advocate with Leadership Council. I believe it was Michael who mentioned, and Mr. Dave mentioned also the private-public partnerships. So what kind of private-public partnerships have y'all considered or explored? Is there specific policies that y'all are thinking about that can help support affordable housing?
Well, the specific example I mentioned, we're having conversations with the Kern High School District about bringing trade career training programs here. They already have them partially established, but they would welcome a full 4-year curriculum that the district wouldn't have to develop on their own. So that's an example of one of them on one specific issue, that's labor force. I think there are probably public-private partnerships involving financing that could be developed. There was a lot of talk about public-private partnerships in land development back before the Great Recession. I think the Great Recession beat all that down. All those discussions kind of disappeared. But I'm no expert on public-private partnerships, but I just sense that there are opportunities for that kind of activity. Even in Bakersfield here, we view our relationship as builders with the city of Bakersfield, for example, as a partnership. We couldn't do it without them. Also should throw a bone to the governor, because I've been kind of hard on the state in my comments today, but Governor Newsom declared home building an essential industry, allowed us to stay open, and God bless the city of Bakersfield. They stayed open and processed permits and even did inspections on time. It was remarkable, Chris. You guys did a great job.
I wouldn't call it remarkable. It's just a day's work.
Day's work. But other states like Washington, Michigan, and Massachusetts shut down their home building industries altogether. And all of those states, especially Washington and Massachusetts, have critical housing problems.
Michael, do you have any examples on those public-private partnerships that you were referring to? Thank you.
Well, I mentioned one on the lack of condo development and the things that the public can do from the state perspective to help that out. But I think there's other areas that could work, for example. But I will caveat with this statement, which is Chris and his team at Bakersfield. It's a big city. They're well staffed. 1/3 of the cities in the valley don't have a planner or an active consultant, and 1/3 have about a junior planner only. And then 1/3 are well staffed. So depending on what city you're talking with, when you say public-private partnership, it requires a lot of work on behalf of the city, right? But if the city doesn't have the staffing, then it's just not gonna go too far. So saying that, I will say that cities can proactively set the table more for public-private partnerships if those opportunities exist. When I worked in the public sector, a housing director of City of Fresno, we used to actively go after surplus land. We used to ask school districts what land they're not using. We would acquire those properties, rezone them, develop architectural plans for them, put $1 million on the site in an RFP, request for proposal, for developers to come and take the project, do an analysis of the funding available that could do it, do some feasibility, do the market report, do the CEQA analysis, do the infrastructure analysis, all in advance, set the table and say, here, private sector, will you do this project? I think when cities do that, the private sector and affordable housing developers respond a lot quicker. So, if you have the capacity, if you have the resources, so those are my big caveats, right? If you have the land, if you have the money, if you have the staffing, then you could do those things to forge more public-private partnerships in your community.
Thank you. Okay, and then I had a comment about funding. I believe the city of Bakersfield allocated $5 million from PSVS for housing, which was a great addition, right? But that is a small allocation in comparison to other departments and what other departments have received. So I just want to raise that and encourage our panelists here to also support in asking the city for more allocations for affordable housing, because 5 million, I mean, earlier there was a comment made that 3 million is really nothing, right? 5 million is only 2 million more. I think that we want to push the city of Bakersfield and other jurisdictions as well to use their budgets to allocate those fundings for affordable housing development. And then last question I had was about the housing element programs that are active right now. Mr. Boyle, what would you say are the housing element programs that have supported affordable housing development? Because the two numbers that you provided for low income and high income, whether or not they were meeting the actual allocations, there was still a huge gap in between those two. So was there one particular housing element program that you would say was very effective in helping with affordable housing during this past year?
I wouldn't say there was one particular program that was helpful, although when you look at the revenues that have been funneled through to the city, whether that's with CARES dollars, HAP dollars, HEAP dollars, REAP dollars, towards creating more opportunities for affordable housing, I think the city has done a good job in putting those monies where they belong in and supporting our partners, PAC and the like, in helping to generate more low-income units to come out of the ground. That's reflected in the numbers, and I think we're going to see even better numbers in fiscal year 21, or pardon me, calendar year 21. That's how HCD does their calculations. And I talked with ECD staff just last week, and there's a confidence that will exceed our production from last year this upcoming year. So there's been great resources funneled through the pandemic into the city, and we have expended them.
Thank you. I said I had one last question, but I have one more. I've noticed that when it comes to the higher income housing, there's a lot of sprawl happening over to the west side. Not a lot of higher income housing being built in the existing neighborhoods. I'm wondering, is that something that do you think has contributed to the issue of affordable housing and also maybe to infrastructure? I'm thinking like if there was higher income housing being built closer to lower income housing, would that support with the need of infrastructure that a lot of low income housing or a lot of low income neighborhoods don't have, rather than expanding to the west and also causing more traffic down to the west and increasing GHGs? Is there any consideration there?
I think I took away more than a handful of questions there. So I'm going to start at the beginning, and then I'll move from there. First and foremost, I want to reiterate that the city doesn't build houses. We support the development of houses, and you know, God bless America. Where housing goes is really a byproduct of the market, and the decisions of individual property owners to place their properties up for sale to a developer and transition into housing product, and that's been a driving force on the west side of our community. But the city can't necessarily grow into the foothills. We have geologic faults and the like to the east of our community. So it's wonderful that people find Bakersfield a place where they want to live, and consequently, we've seen development such that we have doubled in size in the last 25 years. To answer the question as to where housing goes, well, I think affirmatively furthering fair housing will really result in providing housing opportunities throughout the community for all segments of the community, and there's benefit there. And we'll go through a zoning exercise as part of our housing element to, if we haven't already accommodated that, because I would note that 62% of my low income and 28% of my very low income housing units was on the west side of the community. But if we haven't accommodated that and we need to create additional zoning coming out of these new RHNA numbers, that's exactly what we'll do in an effort to comply with law and to provide for the best built urban form that we can. People live in Bakersfield because they like it. It's a wonderful community to live in, and our job is to make it better for all, not for some. And I think that I can speak for my council in knowing that that's a primary goal for them, in that they've asked staff to dedicate resources towards exploring ways to make that happen. And we're seeing those results in the types of housing projects we've got coming out of the ground. We're in plan check for a low-income housing project in our southwest quadrant that will be a wonderful resource to that part of our city as well right now. So we'll be counting that as part of our 2020 numbers. That's 72 units. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I actually have part of an answer to your question about growth going to the west. Just about every major metropolitan area in the country has a dominant direction of growth, and it's driven by a bunch of different factors. LA County wanted to grow along 101 right up into the Ventura area, but Ventura's no growth policies kind of put that to a halt, and ended up going into Santa Clarita Valley. Atlanta experienced one of the largest urban expansions in world history back in the 70s and 80s, and it was all to the north and west along Interstate 80 outside of Atlanta, an enormous expansion of urban development. And here our growth was to the west for two reasons. One was Cal State Bakersfield, located west of 99, and the Kern County Land Company owned a gazillion acres in that same part of town. And you had a large master plan developer like Castle and Cook that set a tone and a level of quality that really caused that area to boom. And although I think the Northeast and the Southeast will come into their own over time, because the Southwest is getting built out. Eventually all the tracks that the city has approved over the years will be built out there. Bolt House Properties, I think, has the largest single remaining land holding out in that that area, but there's plenty of vacant land that could be used for housing and urban development east of 99.
Okay. We scheduled this meeting for 2 hours and we're a little bit past that. I would like to offer you, if you have any other further comments before we break. I would really like to thank you for your participation. It's been very interesting. And I know I learned a lot. I took 3 pages of notes, so that usually means there was some good information. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I'd only like to add that I appreciate the invitation, and I'd love to visit you again sometime.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Same here.
Thank you. Michael, thank you. And I want you to know that you did have a nameplate. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew who you were.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Out of the way.